Prince Harry apparently has a stalker, and he's using this to try to leverage the British government into giving him a larger protection apparatus. And this is just, of course, ridiculous. Every public figure pretty much has a stalker that they have to deal with from time to time. This is the burden of public life, one that Harry should know quite well. But it's actually kind of insane to read through the Telegraph article talking about this because they're very much keep saying, well, just because Harry is connected to the throne, that means he should get all of this protection, that every safeguard to ensure that taxpayer money is not being wasted should just be thrown out the window and the people should have to pick up the bill. I call foul on that. And I also actually looked through some of the pictures at the event where this alleged stalker was, and I think I figured out who it is. And it's just a guess, just a supposition, not trying to call this person out, but Harry was like literally in a picture with her. He was very, very close. And it's just hard to say, well, is she really all that dangerous if she's right there? But I don't know if that's really her. But we are going to get into all this because, of course, this has huge implications, not only on the royals, but on taxpayers as well. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary, so please hit that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. And as a reminder, we have the Crown Report segment where we go over all sort of the other royal news, which airs every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and then 8 p.m. in Great Britain. And of course, as well, you can catch the rewatch later, but it'll be a live stream and it's a great time to hear about what all the other royals are doing. So this stalker issue, it's sort of weird and it's just annoying because so many public figures deal with stalkers. We even had a month or two ago, Jennifer Aniston had an alleged stalker ram the gate at her house. I say alleged for legal reasons, not because I don't think that's the actual person who did it. And she was quite spooked. She had security who had to deal with it because, unfortunately, the reality remains if you are a public figure of any sort, and that can be on the silver screen, on television screens, or even, let's say, on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, you may have to deal with a stalker. And this can even happen in someone's personal life. You have a relationship with someone, that relationship goes belly up, and then all of a sudden, you might have somebody who's attempting to stalk you, and you have to deal with that. And unfortunately, the reality is it's very hard to track and address stalking issues. But Harry and his team is using this as a way to justify, I think, greater security measures being taken to protect his safety. And the Telegraph interviews a gentleman who really is trying to argue that just because Harry is this somewhat public figure and connected to Great Britain, that all the rules should just be thrown out the window for Harry because he is the son of the king and he's connected to the monarchy. But a lot of royals who are connected to the monarchy do not get that sort of protection. And honestly, Harry sped up the inevitable. How the British royal system works, like any royal system, is that yes, he may be fifth in line to the throne now, but in a decade or two, he'll be about to 10th in line of succession or something like that. Once Catherine and William's children start having children, Harry will become increasingly irrelevant. And Harry just needs to accept that and accept as well that when he left the royal family, he left that security umbrella that he wants to cling to now so much. He made that decision. And Harry will get protection if there's an actual reason to have protection. There's not always a reason to. There's not maybe always an issue. And that's a risk any public figure takes. Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, Keira Knightley, Johnny Depp. I don't know why I'm thinking of Johnny Depp and Keira Knightley. Maybe I'm thinking Pirates of the Caribbean. Celine Dion, Jennifer Lopez, any one of them, if they are in the UK or if they live in the UK generally, have a security risk and have a risk of a stalker developing just because they're public figures. If you can't handle that, don't be a public figure. Now, if that happens personally, I feel like that's an immense tragedy because sometimes it's really hard to get police to take that seriously. And by the time they do, it may have escalated into violence. And so I 100% acknowledge that stalking can result in potentially violent acts. But yet at the same time, when I was looking through this, I couldn't help but think, is this person really like a stalker in the very much negative sense? Or are they just a Harry and Meghan fan, following around their idols like people follow around Taylor Swift on the Eras tour? It's an interesting question. So let's get into the article because it is actually quite long. But as I was reading through more of it, I was like, oh, this is sort of twisted how this gentleman they're interviewing, I forget his name off the top of my head, is really trying to push a point on Harry's behalf. But if the rules are thrown out for Harry, they should be thrown out for anyone. And anyone who's dealing with a stalker should be able to demand Met security. That's how it should go. So let's begin with this from Victoria Ward. Stalker came within feet of Prince Harry on UK visit. So I just want to point out this is the woman right here. And so they did blur her face. But what's really interesting is if you go back through, and again, I'm just being careful because I don't know the legalities here and I don't want to get in super huge trouble or anything. But if you look back through the pictures from Alamy, you see a woman. And if you put in Prince Harry, it'll come up. And she looks a lot like this person. She has black hair and she also had little pearl stud earrings. And I feel like I can see those right there. So I'm just saying that might be the person. And she's literally right next to Harry, like right next to him at one point. And I was like, okay, so they had to body block this person as they claim to in here, and yet she's right there. So what's the truth? So here we go. Says a known stalker came within feet of the Duke of Sussex on two separate occasions during his recent visit to the UK. The Telegraph can reveal the woman who may be suffering from mental health issues. If she isn't, and she's just a fan, although I would say if you're a fan of Harry and Meghan, you may have mental health issues. You're kind of smearing her right there a little bit. Entered a secure zone at a central London hotel at which the Duke was attending the Well Child Awards on September 9th. 2 days later, she was spotted within a stone's throw of the Duke at the Center for Blast Injury Studies in West London, security sources said. She is said to have previously followed him to Nigeria. Now, I just want to put up a little quick picture here of the fervent worship of Harry and Meghan in Nigeria with this ridiculous, ridiculous sign that a couple of women posted. And there were more of those, but Harry and Meghan wanted this rabid stalker fan base. They're the ones who cultivated this fan base. You can't complain now when the fan base doesn't do what you want them to do when you're the one who cultivated it. A member of the Duke's private staff recognized the woman and body blocked her to ensure that she could not get any closer, despite not knowing if she was carrying a weapon. Because, we have to make it super dangerous here. Like, I feel like they're really smearing this woman. Like, who knows? It might not have even been that bad. It might have been that bad. I don't know. But I feel like at the same time, they're really potentially exaggerating this to prove a point. Because my question is this real or are you exaggerating it to fit the narrative that you want it to fit? There was no police presence at the event. Yeah, because the police have better things to do, to be quite honest. That's just kind of life. They can't be at every place protecting everybody. That's just not how it works. The woman is on a list of fixated individuals drawn up by a private intelligence company for the Duke's personal protection team. She has a history of following the Duke and Duchess all over the world and was seen during the couple's trip to Abuja, Nigeria last year. So she sounds like a fan, guys. She sounds a little bit like a Sussex squad member, which I'm sure she is. You wanted this fan base. Don't complain when they're doing what you kind of wanted them to do. Come on now. Scotland Yard declined to comment on the two incidents, stating it did not discuss security arrangements. The incidents are likely to be used by the Duke as proof of the risk he faces, and which is faced by those around him as he continues to pursue the right to a full risk assessment of his security arrangements despite losing a legal challenge against the government. A friend said the Duke felt enormous guilt. Oh, poor baby. That his high profile put others around him at risk, citing it as one of the reasons why his visits to the UK are so infrequent. It should not be left to two office staff to act as extra eyes and ears or provide a physical barrier. That should not happen. It is only going to take one motivated lone individual for this to go south very quickly. I mean, that is true, but you left. You made a freaking decision and you can't live with the consequence. And excuse me, but I don't have a lot of sympathy for you. Nobody is wanting anything at all to happen to Harry or Meghan. But if you're so flipping worried about your security, then don't leave or leave under much better terms. And honestly, this was always going to happen. This was always going to be the case at some point, just like with Andrew, and just like with Edward, and just like with Anne. The full time security would be pulled. Because when the monarchy keeps going, at some point, somebody who used to be second in the line of succession, like Anne, is now all of a sudden, I don't even know where she is. She's in the teens. She's strongly in the teens now. And that's because monarchies over time, the main line of the family, which Harry is no longer on, gets put further and further and further and further down the line. This was always going to be the inevitable outcome. Archie and Lily were never, ever going to get full time security. They'll get it at events. They'll get it if the risk assessment comes back and shows that there's a risk. If there's not, things will just keep going as is. Things will just keep going as is. That is sort of the reality of the situation. That is the reality of royal life. If you can't handle it, then you need to rethink things. I mean, I don't understand why it's again, I always use this analogy, but it's so true. I love this quote. It's like explaining gravity to a chicken. Like, how did you not know this? This has happened to your aunts and uncles. It's happened to your cousins. It was always going to happen to you, Prince Harry. You will not escape gravity in this particular situation. Gravity will always apply. But for Harry, some reason gravity is an enigma. It's a confusion. He doesn't understand it. But the taxpayers of the UK are not required to fulfill and fuel your ego. Their money is not there for you to do as you please, basically. Their money is not there. Their time is not there. The resources they provide to the government is not there for you to use and wheel and deal just as you want. There must be safeguards in place. Otherwise, abuse happens. And they reviewed your case and goes, no, there's just really no reason, which I think is largely true, to keep a full-time security apparatus on Harry at all times, anytime he's in the UK, or to do these massive, very costly risk assessments, which will probably just basically determine everything that they've already heard. And he is not important to the future of the monarchy anymore. That's why Charles should strip him of the place in line succession and titles. And then this problem pretty much goes away because, well, whoops, Harry's not really crucial to the institution anymore. Like, why do we need to worry about this? Why do we need to worry about what Harry's complaining about? Like, again, this is a situation, but let's go on. So the Duke has no right to guaranteed state-backed police protection, and this is determined by Ravik. So Harry's went to the police about this. He wanted bespoke arrangements, and he's getting minimal or no police protection on most visits, which is how it should be. Instead, they are assigned a liaison officer, which I kind of find a little bit funny. So a role police sources admitted was a suit in an office who was not security vetted. Yeah. So this is where it gets somewhat interesting. It says Harry had been such a target. He was on a level 7, the highest category. The only two people with a similar risk at the time were Elizabeth II and Baroness May, the then prime minister. So that would be Theresa May. Several people have been jailed for either plotting to kill the Duke, making threats against him, or encouraging others to attack him. Some of them are free now. Neil Basu, the former head of the UK's counterterrorism police, who held various positions on Ravik between 2018 and 2021, so 4 years ago, by the way, told The Telegraph it was a mistake not to formally assess the threat faced by the Duke. He said he did not believe Harry's risk profile had been changed before he retired from the front line policing in 2022. In fact, he acknowledged it had almost certainly increased. That is his opinion. That is his opinion. And you got to wonder if this guy is here to lobby for Prince Harry, contacted by Harry's team to put this article basically in the Telegraph. The most common nature of the threat to a member of the royal family has been fixated individuals, as it is for a lot of celebrities. This is not an isolated Harry or royal issue. This is a large-scale issue. Actually, the only one who had really verifiable threats was Queen Elizabeth II. There's even been a specialist team set up within New Scotland Yard to deal with fixated threat assessments because there were so many. Exactly. Because a lot of public people, again, people who they have mental health issues become fixated on people. Normally the head of state by a country mile more than anybody else, but nevertheless, certainly other members of the royal family, and it is the hardest thing to guard against. The only way to stop those kinds of people is to be close to the principal and to smother them if they get approached. I wasn't aware that that happened, but that should underline immediately how high the risk is when he's here. Okay, well then tell me all the other celebrities who've had the same issue, which I'm sure are many. Why don't they get med security protection? Explain that to me. Mr. Basu. Why don't they all get protection too? They should all get protection too, because I imagine they all have the same issues. So few are better placed to assess the security risk for Harry than Mr. Basu, which is, I'm sure, why, in my opinion, Harry's team contacted him to get him to have this interview. Having said on Revik, the former Met Police Assistant Commissioner has an innate understanding of how decisions are reached and the secretive discussions involved and who holds sway. Then why is he talking? He shouldn't be talking. The committee's 10 strong membership teams includes representatives from the Home Office, the Royal Household, and the Met. So Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary and most senior aide, is a member, as is a representative from the Prince of Wales's household. Mr. Basu is convinced the Duke's relationship with his father is key to resolving the issue, suggesting that Sir Clive has sufficient influence to instigate this change. Oh, so he should instigate this change and waste taxpayer money for Harry. That's his job, apparently, is to help Harry and waste taxpayer money. I don't think this dog will hunt. No offense. The fact is, if the Met had been asked to protect the Duke of Sussex by either the head of state, whether it was the Queen at the time or the King, we would protect that person. Oh, so Charles should, let's say, go beyond his purview to say, well, you need to protect my baby boy. That is not going to go well. You're kind of crazy if you think that's a good idea. There's nothing whatsoever that would have led us to say, no, I'm sorry, sir, or ma'am, we're not doing that. Well, you should. This is up to the taxpayers, or this should be in the interest of the taxpayers. This is not of interest just to please Harry, as who believes was behind the decision to withdraw the Duke's right to automatic protection. He says, I think the reality is Harry and the head of state, his father, would probably need to come to some sort of arrangement between them. And I think that reconciliation would be key to this problem. Oh, so you think that this issue, which requires taxpayer dollars, should just be discussed between two people, a father and a son, and because daddy feels bad for his son, daddy should pay for, like, come on. That's not a good reason. There needs to be a good reason to spend taxpayer money at any point. And I'm sure a lot of people would say in the UK that their taxpayer dollars are being used in a way they don't want it to. And I imagine this fits the bill. Harry left. He is no longer critical to the institution, and that's it. This is not a hard situation to figure out. Harry just can't accept it. And so they're, getting somebody like this Neil guy to talk, and I just don't think this helps. Like, I don't want my president saying, you know what? My baby boy, he needs protection, or, my friend and my kid or whatever needs protection. And so, you know what? I'll just arbitrarily give them protection, all the things they need. Like, no, I would be upset by that. And yeah, I'm sure there's a little bit of that going on, but to lay it out like this ain't gonna work because Harry may be related to the head of state, but so are a lot of people. And just because Harry is related to the head of state does not automatically grant him security. That's not how this is supposed to work. There needs to be a good reason why to go down this path, and there just isn't. He is constitutionally irrelevant, and Harry will only become more and more irrelevant over time. This is how all monarchies work. This is not a surprise. I think the Duke of Gloucester started off as, I think, fourth in the line of succession when he was born, and now he's down into the 20s at the very least, if not the 30s. You just get bumped further on down the line the more kids are born. If you are not in that first realm, that's just what happens. This is not a mystery to solve. This is like a no-duh situation. Buckingham Palace, of course, rightly, strongly refuted the idea, insisting that Ravik was wholly independent, which it should be. A well-placed source said that there was no connection whatsoever between private family relationships and the security provisions for Harry, adding that it would be false and damaging to suggest otherwise. Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Palace insider said the Duke's security was purely and wholly a matter of government and for Ravik, on which there is a royal representative whose role is not to advise on what degree of security provision may or may not be appropriate. They also said that just as it would be constitutionally wrong for the king to ask the government to take a particular course of action on a security provision, so would it be inappropriate for his representatives to do so on his behalf. So, and then Mr. Basu acknowledges that, yeah, no, the king and queen both would not do this. I've happened to have known them both, and I know that they would abide by that. But that doesn't mean influence isn't brought to bear by other people in the household. And I think that is what's happened. So this is his, this guy is just speculating. And yes, he has reason to know some of these things, but it's just needless speculation. The former police chief said the Duke was never going to win his legal challenge against the Home Office. Just a judicial review on the decision making of the committee. Nothing they did was ultra vires. Nothing they did was wrong. It just whether ethically you think it's right thing to do, not protecting somebody who's high threat and risk. Well, they made a decision not to protect him. They have a rationale for that. They're entitled to that rationale. I just happen to think it is wrong. He believes the police were being used as pawn in whatever is essentially a family dispute arising from the Duke's decision to quit official duties and move abroad. Oh my gosh, you sound Mr. Basu, I don't think you're doing yourself any favors here. Harry left. I don't want my taxpayer money extended on somebody who's no longer constitutionally relevant and important to the country. Like, that's it. So it talks about Harry only receiving security a handful of times, usually in connection with royal engagements like this one, and asked if the Duke had been left exposed. He said, I do. I fail to see how assessing each visit on its merits actually fulfills the responsibility to manage his risk, threat, and risk. If this is the metric, everybody who comes to the UK, I should be able to ask for Met protection. If this is a risk, I may have a risk or threat. Should we not all request a Met review of our security? Like, this just goes down crazy route. This opens it up for basically anyone to demand a risk assessment and a threat assessment. Like, this is unsustainable. It's just crazy that he's even suggesting this. And obviously, I mean, how did he come to the Telegraph with this? I imagine Harry and Meghan's team put him up to this. And I'm sorry, but he doesn't come across well. I don't see how that works because they're giving him the protection at the events where he least requires it and not when he actually needs it. You're either at threat all the time or you're not. They admitted some were nervous about the cost of giving the Duke police protection. Well, yeah, duh. The Duke was regularly found himself languishing at the bottom of the popularity polls in recent years. There's unlikely to be much public appetite for spending taxpayer money to keep him safe. Exactly. But the decision should have nothing to do with whether somebody is liked or disliked. Well, it should have to do with the fact that he left the royal family and decided to pursue his own ambitions. That should matter. He also pointed out that there were many polarizing characters among Ravik's cohort. It would be impossible to protect everyone who faced any threat or risk. One of the biggest considerations is therefore the effect on any potential incident to have on brand Britain. There is a limited number of people on that list, and they are chosen because the impact of one of them being seriously hurt or assassinated would be large on either the economy, the public psyche, or the proper functioning of the government. There are plenty of people on that list who don't have a threat and profile that would automatically guarantee them armed protection. He, the Duke, was certainly one that did, allegedly. So it goes on to talk about Taylor Swift getting protection. So she got protection, though, because, and this is not actually stated here, but it was very important. The reason Taylor Swift got protection was not just because of the economic impact, but because the previous show in Austria had a clear terrorist threat that resulted in the concert being canceled. That was the real reason. It was not just because of the economic impact, although I'm sure that factored in as well. They're thinking of Ariana Grande in Manchester. That's why they made that decision. Don't just say it's economic impact. There was an actual terrorist threat, an actual threat against the concerts of Taylor Swift, and the government had to take appropriate steps to ensure the public's safety. Big, big freaking difference. Salman Rushdie, who has received death threats for more than 30 years since the publication of The Satanic Verses in his 1988 novel, is another example. I would put the Duke as probably one of the most famous and recognizable and well-known people in the world. Okay, like, how much smoke is Harry's team blowing up your butt? That's all I gotta say. Whether you support him or not, that's the reality of for brand Britain. He doesn't represent brand Britain anymore. He doesn't. He shouldn't. That's a big problem here too. I just realized is that he doesn't represent brand Britain. He doesn't. He represents brand Montecito, brand as ever, brand Meghan Markle. That's what he represents. He does not represent brand Britain anymore. That dream died. Harry killed it. He's fifth in line to the throne, and he'll soon be 10th, 12th maybe at some point. He'll just get knocked, and so will his kids. Humble down the line of relevance. That is how it works. Do we really want anything to happen to him or his family wherever they are in the world, but particularly when they're on UK soil? Nobody wants anything to happen to them. Nobody's saying that. And why anywhere in the world? Are you just suggesting that my taxpayer dollars in the United States should be used to protect this guy pursuing his wife's Hollywood career? No, that just makes me angry. The arrogance here is astounding. And golly, Harry and Meghan's teen, they need to do better here. So it would seem to me that discretion that could be used to protect him has been withdrawn. And if you ask me who withdrew it, I can't tell you that for sure because I don't know. But it seems like an odd decision to have made. No, it seems like the right decision to have made. Harry left. He's not a working member of the royal family anymore. Not everybody's connected to the royal family gets 24/7 police protection. Most of them don't. Only a handful do. It's His Majesty, Her Majesty, their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales, and their kids, George, Charlotte, and Louis. Those are the ones who get 24/7 security. Everybody else does not. They get security on royal engagements at different events and those sorts of things, but not 24/7. If they live on an estate where there is security, they get protection there. If they want to pay for additional, they can do that. But not everybody does. But the budget for protecting a rabid cohort is expensive. For Tony Blair, it costs £250,000 a year. And the reason somebody like Tony Blair or any of our former presidents or former prime ministers get 24/7 security is because they make decisions that have grand implications, not only locally, but worldwide. And so, because they're making these huge changes and decisions, they inherit a level of risk that should be, let's say, repaid with protection. Tony Blair's globetrotting cost them £16,000 a week. But Mr. Basu said that by denying the Duke armed protection, other officers are being taken off frontline duties with individual police forces left to pick up the bill. Well, Harry could just stay home. He doesn't have to come back to the UK that much. The reality is that it must be costing the police more to do it the way they're doing it. As a citizen, I don't want the officers who are supposed to be responding to my local geography taken away just because the Duke is here for a few minutes. Well, I'm sorry, then what are you asking? I'm very confused. I'm very confused because my understanding is that you want protection for this guy. So, yes, police would be pulled from other details to protect this guy. So, are you saying that there should be just a dedicated force stuck on Harry 24/7, even when he's in the States? I don't think so. Harry, who pays all his staff stuff, takes public transportation, yada, yada, yada. Harry did give the 30 days notice so Ravick can do the assessment. The Royal Lancaster Hotel in central London was swept ahead of the Well Child Awards. And then he got a private carriage on a train. And then he got a plainclothes officer to escort him from St. Pancras Station to Nottingham Station and back again. So he got a little bit. I don't understand why they're complaining. And then obviously they had the big 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games at St. Paul's Cathedral. I don't know why they needed to have it there, but they feared the Duke would have been a sitting duck. And the City of London officers were shocked by the total absence of royal protection officers from the Met, according to a security source. Well, like maybe they aren't on the up and up because they're not told things, but they were worried the Duke only had a number for a protective security liaison officer if there was trouble, which is little more than 999. This was a well-advertised event in an iconic public place. There was the need to mitigate not only the usual threats of fixated individuals and extremists, but right then, anti-war protesters. However, Ravick instruction was expressed. The creative solution was to increase the number of armed, uniformed officers in plain clothes in the crowd outside already to ensure general public safety, which is what happened. Yeah, because it was a big public event, like they would do at any big public event at St. Paul's Cathedral. So just to end the article, it says, the Duke has acknowledged that the legal route may not have been the best course of action, his legal case trying to get the security, as there was no way to win this through the courts. I wish somebody had told me that beforehand. Well, Harry, you know what? Your lawyers want to make money and you're a fool. So they'll just take your money. Just putting that out there, just something, like some food for thought. But what is really the whole point here? What should we focus on? And that's simply that, yeah, if you are a public figure, you inherit risks. Same for Taylor Swift, same for Prince Harry. If those are risks that you don't like, well, then buy several thousand acres in Montana and build yourself a massive home with a big gate or something and just stay there. If you don't want security risks, there's no reason why you have to come to the UK, Prince Harry. I mean, I definitely approve of you trying to rebuild the relationship with your family, but is that really because you want to build a relationship or you want the security issue resolved the way you want? But the UK people and their money aren't there to do your bidding. You left. There were consequences to you leaving. And if you can't accept them, I can't help you. Nobody can. This is just the price of Mexit. This is the price of following your wife and doing what she wanted. The result was a situation where you lost a lot. And you just can't seem to accept that. But at the same time, I think what truly motivates this in a lot of ways is not protecting his family, although I'm sure that's a big part of it, not really having that security, not being his father, son, or whatever. It's just a stark reminder to Harry of the thing he always feared, which was irrelevance. Harry desperately, desperately feared when George would grow up and be more important than he was. And that's just the realities of the royal system. That was always going to be the case for Harry. And Harry could have done a great job of being well beloved by the people, taking Princess Anne as an example. There's a reason why she's the third most favorite royal in the UK right now. And that's because she shut up, she did the job, she didn't complain, she even was the target of an attempted kidnapping, which she kind of thwarted herself in a lot of ways. I mean, there were other people involved, but she definitely tricked that would be kidnapper and protected herself in many ways. And you don't see her going, well, I was the actual almost victim of a kidnapping. So I need all the security around me all the time. No, I really think Princess Anne can take care of herself. And of course, it should be repeated that nobody wants anything to happen to Prince Harry or his family. But there are bigger things at play here than just Harry's wants and desires. There's taxpayer money. There's obligations that the government has to the people. There's so many different factors here, and not everybody is going to be there just to soothe Harry's ego. Sadly, Harry's just going to have to deal with the consequences of his decisions. And some of his decisions there were to leave the British monarchy. And I'm sorry that it didn't turn out exactly how he wanted. I'm sorry he didn't get everything he wanted. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken at all, and I don't think I am, I think a lot of people warned him that this would be the outcome. And he was just too arrogant and foolish not to take the warning to heart and pursued through anyways, and now can't deal with the consequences of his decisions. Actions have consequences, Harry, and you're unfortunately going to have to deal with them. But hopefully you remain safe, you and your wife and your family. However, the British government has to make the decisions in the best interest of the taxpayers, not you and your family. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think, and I shall talk to you again very soon. Bye.